I love that when you walked in tonight that you were wearing a coat, because I was like, yeah, I'm going to wear my coat.
It's a good looking coat.
It is a good looking coat. Dude, I love this thing. It's from Ann Sons. It is called Black Gold. It is freaking awesome. It is an homage to the explorers of the past. You know, this is an explorer's jacket. It's waxed leather. It's freaking awesome, dude. I love this coat. The main reason I'm wearing it is because I'm freaking cold, dude.
Yeah, it's single digit temperatures.
But, you know, it just happens to work out rather well, because we're going to talk about some cold, hard truth this evening, right? We're going to talk about, among various things, but like what is value? What is valuable to human beings, and what can you do with it, right? If the whole point and purpose of everything that we're doing here is to create options for yourself, to secure your sovereignty, to act instead of be acted upon, right? You need to know what are the fundamental underlying things that enable you to act instead of be acted upon. And there's an analogy between value and gravity that is really valuable. And yeah, no pun intended. That is really useful. And I think it's important that we explore the idea of gravity first, right? You know, what is gravity itself, and how does it relate to value? And when I say value, I'm talking specifically like what people say, you know, what does it mean to be a high value man or high value woman? What does it mean to add value to a relationship? Or you know what I mean? And we're going to talk about that tonight. But to kind of set the stage, you shared this clip with me that I thought was really interesting. But what was it about this interview, that at least this little snippet, that grabbed your attention and you're like, dude, we need to talk about this?
So he's hosting a gentleman named Bob Lazar, and he claims that during the 1980s that he was part of a program that reverse engineered what we're now calling unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Okay.
Or UFOs, or extraterrestrial flying craft. And from what we can see of them, and if there's anybody out there who likes to follow this stuff, these UFOs move in a way that completely defy what we know of aviation.
Yeah. Physics.
Right. They defy physics in the way.
Aeronautics, which we've talked at length about. Yeah.
Right. It kind of plays into our anthroponautics, that if these craft can completely defy what we understand of physics, we certainly observe people who completely defy the bounds of what we would understand, or at least judge.
Yeah.
We have judgment about the way things should be. And there are some individuals, groups, nation states, that can do things that are kind of undefiable.
Yeah.
And why? But this is what I loved about it. Let's get into the clip.
Well, he was in the 80s. The predominant theory was gravity is produced by gravitons.
Okay.
You know, theoretical particles, but they're not. They're waves. They're not particles. And that's
so. The thought is that the way we experience gravity, it's based on mass, which is why the moon, which is roughly 1/4 the size of the Earth, has 1/6 of the Earth's gravity. So there's some sort of a computation you can make based on mass.
Right. And remember, we can observe the effects of gravity, but we have no idea what it is. All we can do is observe it, and we can't make it. The only way you can make gravity is just put more mass together, and it's just a product of gravity. But if you can if you have a machine that makes gravity, you can pretty much do anything. You can affect time. You can have force fields. All that stuff that's in science fiction becomes reality if you have a machine that can make gravity. And what we worked on in the desert was a machine that makes gravity.
So, gravity machines that he claims that he can, or he worked on machines that can make gravity, but we don't actually know what gravity is. We introduced this idea that value is an analogy to gravity. And what we're going to discuss here tonight is that this machine, this right here, is a gravity machine. I mean, we'll eventually get there, but kind of want people to understand like why they should keep listening, what they're tuning into, where we're trying to go with all of this.
Yeah, this looks like a total reach. Like, what does this reverse engineering spacecraft have to do with?
Right.
So, I thought analogizing this, because really we're taking these principles of physics and trying to apply them to human behavior.
Right.
And I found it very interesting, him talking about this in one, we love to come back with this idea that we don't understand what gravity is. And that's a physics principle. We don't know what it is, but we can use it, and we use it in math.
And we use it very well
to figure out how to solve all kinds of problems with it.
Right. And we have various models for what gravity might be. We'll go to the whiteboard here in a little bit and explain what all this is, but there's Newtonian gravity and there's Einsteinian gravity. Like there are different ways of modeling gravity. All models are wrong, but some are useful. And what we're going to talk about here, I'll admit up front, hey, maybe we're completely wrong, but it's still useful.
And it's an interesting way to kind of break things out. So if you're still following along here, we have taken a look at math models. I should say the engineer has taken a look at math models. And we agree that light, mass, information, and value all behave the same way.
Yeah.
Although some of these things are different, the math for those items can be compulated the same. So when I was listening to this, because really I think I landed on it because I was looking at something aviation related.
Sure.
And I was like, wow, this is interesting. This whole idea that value, if it behaves like mass, you create more mass and you create more gravity.
Mm-hmm.
This thing, we don't know what it is, but we certainly know it has an effect in value.
Yeah.
And what are these universal values? We're having a conversation about universal values. Like there are things that people want to pursue. And this is kind of coming off of our hate and discontent episode.
Yeah.
That if you were increasing your value because of some pursuit that you're feeling, you want to pursue, there are some pursuits that universally have more value than others.
Yeah.
And if you're doing something because you have decided on your own sovereignty that I want to pursue something, I want to do something, I want to become something, I want to learn something, your value is going to increase. But there are certain categories of value that will increase your value more than others.
Yeah.
And you have a choice of what it is you want to pursue. And we'll pull on that thread in a minute. But picking or choosing or pursuing a high universal value and then attaining that value has this analogy, the analogizing of gravity machines, that you can do damn near anything.
Yeah.
With it. You can stop time. You can and I was like, this is energy maneuverability theory, which is Boyd.
Yep.
And why do certain people get to do things that someone else doesn't get to do?
Right.
And that has now fallen to something we've whiteboarded, that a lot of people who want to bitch and complain about things, like, you don't get to do what successful people do. You don't get to do what super fit people do. You don't get to do what champions do. You don't get to do what somebody who's mastered a certain technique, skill, an academic subject. You don't get to do what they do.
Right.
So your point of place of complaining about you not being able to behave or get the same effect as somebody who has attained a certain level of value is another one of those taking a look at the world the way you think judgment ought to be, and there's the way it is.
Yeah.
Based on a principle. And I love the way he analogized that.
Yeah.
So gravity machines, I mean, we are the machine in this creation of value or increasing your value, and things begin to behave differently around you.
Right.
And when you were big and massive, and I mean that in a physical sense, light and time bends around you.
Mm-hmm.
Why are certain individuals more captivating than others? Why do they create stronger gravitational fields than others? Why do they repulse also more than others?
Yeah, I mean, it's already in our lexicon. Like we talk about people having a magnetic personality, or we talk about a lady having her beta orbiters, right? Like that are simping around her constantly. It's already in the way that we talk about who we are and what our relationships are. This is the analogy of gravity to influence and how people interact, how mass interacts versus how people interact. It's actually not that far-fetched. So I'm going to jump up here to the board for a couple minutes, and I'm going to explain what this all is, try to provide a little bit more clarity on what is that actual analogy. So let me switch over here real quick. Okay. So what we've got here, first up, gravity. What is it? It is an innate attractive force between two like bodies. A body that has a mass 1 and a mass 2, and then there is some distance between these masses. We don't necessarily care about the actual measurement of the two masses or the distance. We just want to recognize that they are real. And then the relationship, as discovered by Isaac Newton, right, here in his Principia, is that the force of gravity is equal to some constant. This is the gravitational constant. What the gravitational constant is doesn't actually matter. It's just a constant. Multiplied by the mass of the first body, the mass of the second body, all over the inverse square of this distance. This is Newtonian gravity. This is Newton's law of universal gravitation. It is a law. Yeah, I know that if we look into Einsteinian gravity, this starts to fall apart. But for our purposes, trying to understand the innate attraction between two bodies of like substance, it is very easy to model. It is accurate to model like this. Okay, so that's gravity. Now we're going to go to charge. Charge, talking specifically like electricity, talking about like if you have a balloon and you rub it on your hair, it creates a static electricity charge between your hair and the balloon. You can feel it, right? So what we have is two charged particles, two like bodies of charge, this one being positive, this one being negative, and there is some distance between these two things. That can be modeled just as gravity, as the force of static electricity is equal to the negative Boltzmann constant. Again, don't care what that number is. Just understand it's a constant. Multiplied by the charge of the first particle, multiplied by the charge of the second particle, all over the distance squared between them. This is how you can model and calculate electrostatic charge. It is nearly identical to gravity. How these are set up, the force is equal to some constant multiplied by the two things, the two bodies, all over the inverse square of the distance. So if we've established that there are two very important phenomena in this world for innate attraction, and they are modeled exactly the same, then if we take that to model another literally two-body problem, and there is innate attraction between these two like things, this person and that person, the relationship is probably going to look the same. So what we have here is person 1 with value 1. person 2 with value 2. Don't care what the value of them is, what the measurement is, just saying that it exists. And then there is a distance of S, or a social distance. And I'm not talking about 6 feet. I'm talking about Robin Dunbar's layers. I'm talking the distance between them in the anthropic domain, right? Are they in a 5 layer? Are they in a 50 layer, 150? 5,000 layer, it doesn't matter. There is a distance between these people. And you can map between every single person on planet Earth, the distance between them. Just as we can get a distance between any body of mass anywhere in the universe, and we can calculate that gravitational attraction between them, we can calculate the force of influence experienced between any 2 people on planet Earth, right? And that influence, or that force of influence, can be modeled as the force of influence is equal to some constant. Don't care what it is. We'll just say it's 1. Okay? 1 is multiplied by the value of the first person times the value of the second person, all over the inverse square of the distance between them. Now, what does this tell us? What can we do with this? That if the value of the first or the second person goes up, if you increase that value, just as if you increase the mass of this body or this body, the force of gravity goes up. Increase the value here, the force of influence goes up. Or if you increase the distance, if you push them further apart, that's going to make the force of influence go down. And that makes sense, right? That if I'm a more valuable person, I'm going to be able to have more influence on the people around me. Or if I am further away from them, if I am not inside their 150 layer, if I'm not part of their Dunbar layers, if I'm not close to them, if I'm so far away, I'm going to have less influence on them. If they are outside of the 150, they are a stranger and they don't get to have influence on me. So that is the analogy here between gravity and influence. Modeled the same way, gravity machines making mass to create gravity and do what they want, create force fields or manipulate time and space or whatever. Well, can people make value? Can they manipulate the fabric of human interaction? Well, that's what we're going to discuss now.
We've been talking about math
cock teasing it.
We're talking about math for a while, and here we drop some math. And I think the exciting part here is that we have figured that if we're going to analogize human behavior, I mean, this one fits. And some models are wrong, some are useful.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about this analogy is that it's really accurate in terms of, I may even say that it's intuitive, in that if somebody is valuable, they're going to be more influential, right? Or if you're not connected to a person, if they're so far outside of your layers, how can they possibly have influence on you? Or if they are really close, if they are an intimate, close, your bestest best friend, of course they're going to have more influence on you. I mean, at least to me, it seems like this is really intuitive. Gravity, it feels kind of hard to wrap your head around. A big part of it is that we don't know what it is, right? It's so hard to understand gravity from a truly substantive level, because like we don't, well, like charge, like we know what an electron is. We know what the charge of a proton or an electron is. Like we can understand those things at a very minute level. We have no clue with gravity. Is it a graviton? Is it a wave? What is it? We don't know.
But we can take the math and we can use it to solve problems. In the same way that if we want to analogize human relationships, right? It's kind of intuitive. I mean, we understand at some level, it maybe at a level that's difficult to explain.
Well, Yeah, because it's part of the hindbrain, the limbic brain. It's, the lizard brain, the reptile brain. Like, that's what we evolved for, is to, through our pattern recognition, we can see things that are valuable. And it's actually not hard. Like, if you look at the juicy, the bright red juicy apple versus the kind of browning, sickly looking one, like, it's not hard to say which one is more valuable, which one is going to better help me to survive and replicate. We have evolved for this. It's not up in the cerebral part of our brain. It's way back in the reptilian part of our evolution.
So we as humans place value in other humans.
Oh yeah.
But we do this also at a universal level, which we understand. So I think there's a lot of people who don't want to see this, don't want to acknowledge the math, who think we can get outside of it. And that's the egalitarian, we're all equal, we're all kumbaya, and we all should all get along, and we should all, and that, hey, look, that would be a wonderful world to live in, but it's not, It's not real. So you may want to adapt a mindset that lives in reality, and the one that adheres to the laws, in order to improve yourself so that you could be better at power and influencing.
Yeah, I think it's important that people, first of all, yes, understand this, but even more fundamentally, understand what is value, period. Like, not just what is valuable, but what is value. Like, what do we mean by value? And for this, I personally turned to Adam Smith, the father of Western economics. That's why I have it right here. Wealth of Nations. Yeah, it's a big, ugly, scary book and not easy to read. It's ridiculous. But in it, he talks about what is meant by value. And I'm going to pull it up here so that we can all see it. The word value, it is to be observed, has two different meanings, according to him, which is fine, and sometimes expresses the utility of a particular object versus the purchasing power of that object. The one may be called value in use, the other value in exchange. So something that you can physically use, such as water, versus something that is valuable in the exchange of the thing, such as like a diamond, right? And I think that there are things about people, about the way that we interact, where there are things that we do, things that we have, things that we are, that are value in utility, and things that are value in exchange. And I'd like to explore that idea just a little bit. I think that muscles, for example, being physically capable is a great example of value in use. I mean, I can't give you my muscles, man, but I can help you to accomplish things by using them. So I think that's a good example of something about people, about human beings, that can be value in use. Whereas value in exchange could be like sex, actually, I think is a value in exchange. Yeah, there's some utility there. That's how we procreate and move the species along. But sex is itself, like the act of lovemaking, holds almost no utility, but man, is it fun. It is a wonderful activity, but you know what I mean? I think there are different things in the way that people interact, that some are valuable in their use, some are valuable in their exchange.
So we're talking about survival and replicative exchange. Like,
yeah,
you're absolutely right. Like, having bruisers in your dunbar layer is going to keep you protected.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
And that is the tribal strangers coming over the horizon to attempt to take our resources. And we have the physical strength to repel that attack and maybe even push further and take their things.
Yeah.
And
to increase our value in various ways, right? To capture more value and utility, but also things that might prove valuable in exchange.
And the replicative, which just by the act itself, I mean, think about, it's undeniable. I mean, the things that we will do for sexual exchange.
Yeah.
So, right. I mean, if you looked at us like utilitarian machines, it makes absolutely no sense. I could see an alien species coming down and observing us and just treating us with the same kind of like what are these animals doing?
Right. Like maybe they just clone themselves. They push the button and they make more of themselves.
Right. This is so inefficient. Like, what are you're trying to make more of yourselves, but this is how you go. It kind of sounds like you're trying to make more of yourselves with all these extra steps.
Yeah.
Why? They would come down and rack and stack us based off value that they would put on us.
Right.
And it depends on the alien species that comes in, because they would put a value on us that they value. Right.
Yeah, the things that are valuable for their own survival, their own replication, however they go about living.
And then they would act upon us.
Yeah, they would.
So, but
unless we are bigger, stronger, more capable.
Yeah, then they don't want to mess with us. Maybe that's why they don't, because we get nuked.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
No, I dropped the sexual exchange piece, right? Which is, it could probably make some listeners uncomfortable, right? But it's such a huge part of our lives that it's an undeniable behavior. That,
of course.
And we do things in order to survive and replicate. You're right. You can't give me your muscular strength, but I want you on my team because you're built like a Titan Viking, and you're gonna go. Right, you take a battle axe to someone in my right.
I guess a Titan Viking isn't going to purr, but
was that an attempt at a growl? What was right. I mean, I'm going to fight at the gates for my tribe.
Yeah.
What are some other examples of things that we value that, I mean, purely just at an exchange rate, but otherwise it's just useless?
Put it in economic terms, like Adam Smith here, right? Just people want money, like, because we know it's useful, but only in that we exchange it for things that we can use, right? A dollar bill that's printed on paper, the paper itself is essentially worthless, but what it represents when I give it to you and what I can exchange it for is incredibly valuable, and which is why we put so much time and effort into educating ourselves to get better jobs, learning a skill so that we can earn more money, right? Moving across a country or even a continent or to a different part of the world, chasing economic opportunity. It's so that we can increase our value.
This is now where a lot of these ideas are starting to come together, because now we've talked about it's money, muscles.
Yeah.
And now the game and frame piece.
Right. How did these all kind of work together? Money being on the survival side of things, muscles being on the replicative, you're big and beautiful, so I want to replicate you into the future, right? So what about game? Like, how does game factor into power and influence and these relationships here? How does game turn this machine into how do I manipulate gravity? How do I manipulate influence with game?
It's tact, diplomacy, it's understanding how human beings interact so that you can better navigate your interactions.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to have a gravity machine that can create force fields or stop time or make it so that you can fly around like Neo. Like, that's one thing. It's a completely other thing to actually know what to do with it. And this kind of goes back to the value in training discussion that we've had previously. Like, those who have neither are invisible, right? They don't have any ability to affect the world around them. Those who have only value are incompetent, because they may be big and beautiful. They may be rich. They may have all the muscles and all the money, but if they don't have the game, they're just incompetent. And they might get lucky, even a blind squirrel finds a nut, as they say, right? they might still be able to influence people around them, but it's not like they can do it consistently. They can't. They haven't found the repeatable process yet to truly use what they have been given or what they have earned in order to affect the world around them on a regular, consistent basis. Right? They may be able to bend the fabric of human interaction here and there, but can they do it reliably in every situation? Probably not. Whereas the person who knows all of the game theory, right? They know like how to do cold pickup, or they know how to source people through social media or whatever, right? They can get the number, they can do a phone close, but can they follow through on it? Like, can they actually bring their will into a reality? No, they're ineffective. It's really only people who have both value and training that are able to be influential. And that's what we all want, right? We want to secure our sovereignty. We want to create options for ourselves, and we want to act instead of be acted upon. We want to be an effective gravity machine, influence machine. And that's what we are. But people who don't have value or don't have the training, they struggle with it.
We've broken out, very first episode, Money Muscles Game Frame, and that's not something that we necessarily invented on our own. That's Rich Cooper he talks about and coaches this, and a lot of other spheres have taken that.
Yeah.
But when we were writing this stuff up, it looks like bro science. Like someone watching this and be like, oh my God, these guys, these guys. Okay. But from our background and some of the things we do professionally, I was able to take the whiteboard marker and go next to it and go, this is at a individual level what national power is in studying diplomacy and use of force and laws of armed conflict. And we have a model for that, and that's DIME, and that's diplomatic, information, military, and economic.
Right.
And we had talked about it, and I'm like, is this not Money Muscles Game Frame?
Dude, when you told me that the first time, I got like the super chills, like goose pimples and everything like popping up. And it was a clairvoyant moment for me. Like, dude, you nailed it on the head that Money Muscles Game Frame is the DIME. It is diplomacy, information, military, economics, like just at the individual level versus the nation state world power level.
Instruments of national power. And we're taught, and we've had to study this. So if these principles are not laughable at a nation state or military or diplomatic level, why then is it gaffed when we're trying to teach men and women how to become valuable?
Right.
In the Money Muscles Game Frame model, because let's line them up. Your money piece is the economics.
Easily.
And we, as a nation state, we're just using us as Americans.
Yeah.
How do we use this as a form of power and influence? Well, we can give another nation state, another individual, we will aid you economically in this thing if you align with us. And if you don't, we will sanction you.
Mm-hmm.
Or we can help you make more money, or we can hinder you from making more money.
Yep.
Your muscles piece is strictly military.
Yeah.
And we have the ability to globally impact you militarily. We can strike you militarily.
Yep.
If you don't do this thing we have a vast, highly trained entity, being the United States military, that can go and strong arm you.
And to our allies, right? Who are in the Dunbar layers of the United States, right? And their military,
right? And then who's going to align? Because these guys got a lot of strength. We'd like to be on maybe this side, and this is completely non-judgmental, right? Not because there's a lot of layers to this model,
of course.
So just lining this up at if I can do the elementary school, which one is like the other, and just draw a line to it, it would. We got the economics is your money, your military is your muscle. And then you have this game and frame piece, which is your diplomacy. So can we talk about it? And what is really in a discussion that is not flirtation or information exchange?
Right.
And it's who can massage a problem. And this is where we have diplomats representing, well, can we discuss this? Can we negotiate and to a means to an end, or to a means to a friendship, or a means to a connection, or a means to maybe not have to do the military thing.
Right.
And frame, we concluded, was the information piece, that not only knowing, but also information warfare.
Yeah.
It's denying information. We've broken this out, and we don't have the math for it, but we have done the math where information behaves also like light and mass and value, and information in and of itself is a whole other category of power and influence. So between those, if it's something that is a requirement for study on how nation states either keep peace or go to war at an individual level, what is your developing your diplomacy, your information, your military, and your economics? And it's show up, be beautiful, have resources,
Have abundance.
have abundance of resources, and in that way, money is one of those. It's a universal value.
Yeah.
Understand the world around you, so that then you can be more influential / diplomatic.
Yep.
And I saw those two together. One looks like bro science and looks like epic douchebaggery, but it's not when you put it up against, I've been required to study the dime model into solving problems at a nation state level, and to come in and solve problems and frame problems and advise the problems through diplomacy, information, military, and economics.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that at a personal level as well. And there are things that at a universal level, we can all assign and look at and go, that is valuable.
Yeah.
Because at a universal level, these things that an individual, if they possess, are going to be more influential and going to be more powerful. And if you have them, you're going to create more of that force field.
Yeah. I've got a quote here from Mitch Princeton from his book Popular. We've talked about him before, and the research that he and people connected with him have done. And what he found through these various studies is that no matter how the questions are posed or who the participants are, research reveals that at least one of the subjects' top 3 wishes usually is extrinsic, meaning outside themselves, not like internal motivation. I just want to be happy, right? They care about something outside of themselves.
If you could rub the genie and have your 3 wishes, it's extrinsic and not intrinsic.
Exactly. Yeah. And at least one of them is going to be fame or attention being particularly common. Power, especially for men, power or influence, right? Beauty or attraction, because attraction is the flip side. It's the complement. It's the orthogonal pair, the orthonormal pair to influence. Beauty or attraction for women are also typically in the top 5. Ultimately, we all want to be admired and influential, and maybe even a little envied. And that last little piece there,
I like how he includes that. And,
of course.
And that's our second law of Anthroponautics.
Yeah, we've talked about how every person is simultaneously attractive and repulsive. And if you make it up far enough into that top right quadrant of being high value and highly trained, you are going to find yourself controversial. People are going to envy. They're going to love to hate you. And they're going to hate that they love you, right? And we all want that. Because of this, because of the math. This is not bro science anymore. Like, we can definitively point to the thing. Just like gravity, We may not completely understand everything that it is, though I think we understand value pretty well. We have evolved as human beings to understand the things that are truly valuable and things that are not. Value in its utility, value in an exchange. And all of that has turned us into very capable, or at least the potential to be very capable, influence machines, where we can start bending the fabric of human interaction. We can create force fields. We can accelerate or stop time. Like, if you know how to do these things, you can be incredibly effective, incredibly influential. But it takes both of the money and muscles, game and frame, the muscles and or the military and economics piece, if we're talking instruments of national power, the military and economics, and the information and diplomacy side. You need all of it in order to be an influence machine. If you have all of these things, if you have the complete money, muscles, game, frame, the complete dime model, and if you are influential, like, what can you do? Like,
you can bend time and space. And this dude, Bob Lazar, out in the desert was reverse engineering alien technology, I guess, to make gravity machines. Because otherwise, then you have to strictly adhere to the world that is imposing its laws on you.
Oh, I've got a good one for this. You ready for...
Yet their strength and their speed are still based in a world that is built on rules.
Dude, so if you are in a position to use your influence, you can start to ignore some of the rules that other people have to follow because they're acted upon, they're invisible, they're ineffective, right? And so Adam Smith, he talks about this as well. And I think it's instructive, it's useful. If you are influential, what can you do? He says that man has almost constant occasion to ask for the help of his brethren, or to engage with the people around them to better survive and better replicate, right? And it is vain for them to expect that people will behave purely out of the goodness of their heart. He says to expect it from their benevolence only. Now, this is the critical piece here. He will be more likely to prevail if he can interest their self-love in his favor. Get people to look to their own survival and replicative needs, which is exactly what we're talking about. I see value in you. I want you in my life. Therefore, you are more influential. And show them that it is for their own advantage to do this thing for him, which he requires of them. If you are powerful, if you are influenced, if you have high value in training, you can now start to get other people to do things for you. Just like how mass tells light what to do, light tells mass where to go. And that comes from John Archibald Wheeler. Space-time tells matter how to move, and matter tells space-time how to curve. Like, it goes back and forth. Value and information being equivalent to each other, just like mass and energy, right? If you can manipulate both, if you are fully trained and know how to use both value and information and training, and you can manipulate the entire fabric of human interaction all around you. The entire anthropic domain is at your fingertips, and you can do what you want with it. Now, we can get into the moral aspect of all that. We can attach judgment on and say things like should, right? Or hope, or you could even lead people to do things the way that you want them to and improve the world around you. But let's be frank and honest. Like, we know that people are going to use money, muscles, game, frame, just as nation states use diplomacy and information, military and economics to hurt other nation states. Like, that does and will continue to happen. But are they wrong for doing it?
I mean, that brings in the moral judgment piece. And I mean, you realize, we breaking this down to the realization that talking about it this way and calling attention to the fact that this doesn't appeal to the advice that you would hear about relationships. And I'm going to use an example that I heard earlier last year. There was kind of a conversation we were having over lunch about the most important thing in a relationship.
Right.
And it kept coming up that, well, communication. And this was also, I think the conversation dove really more into romantic level relationships, that communication is the most important thing, and it's the most important thing. All right, so let's asterisk that trope and then put it up, because then we started doing some whiteboard on information theory.
Yeah.
And what was fascinating,
which we'll get into at another point.
Right. The fascinating thing I took from that, again, with that trope on the board, looking at it going, okay, is this true? And I knew then it at least according to me and my frame and the way I'm seeing the world and the way we're breaking things down math-wise, that's not true. Yeah. So we'll get to that in a second. The information theory piece is that we have been reading and finding that information behaves like gravity. It behaves like light and energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you don't have value and you're spending time on this most important thing, that is communication, information can be measured in bits and bytes.
Yeah.
And that if you have no value, your bits and bytes are very low.
Right.
So the most important thing in a romantic relationship is an exchange of very low bit and bytes.
Yeah.
The most important thing I believe we've come down to is that the most important thing in any person-to-person group or nation-state relationship is to increase your value.
Mm-hmm.
So that when you do communicate, that information exchange is large.
Yeah.
And gives the people in your Dunbar layers more strength and more replicative and survival value.
Yep.
Which means you have to take responsibility upon yourself to be someone of value.
Right.
Universal value. As we've broken down in the book, that if you get to rub the genie, I think most people understand at a human level that like no one's going to judge you. You get to write on a piece of paper, give it to the genie. Genie makes the thing happen. And he found in studies that most people want these universal, well, I want to be big and strong, or I want to be beautiful. I want to have power and the ability to influence others, or I want to secure a lot of assets.
Right.
I'm not even calling it money, just abundance.
Yep.
So if we already know this, why come in and
be so angry about it?
Yeah, and and then pretend like we all don't know that that's in fact what it is we were all in pursuit of.
Because when you yourself, we've talked about this.
I mean, I'm asking this question as a judgmental.
Sure, yeah,
let's
the rhetorical,
let people talk about, right? Like, why are you so upset? Why are you so upset at someone for being right? Like, why?
But we talked about this.
Right.
I know you're asking it rhetorically, but let's, for the benefit of the audience that may have not seen those discussions before, is that as you increase your value, you're going to make people uncomfortable, and they're going to want to correct you. They're going to try to push you back into the herd so that you follow along and leave and show that the way that they are doing things is okay. It's all right. Whereas if you start to go another way, you're starting to shine the flashlight on the things that they're doing wrong, and they're like, well, how come you get to be better than me? Right? Like, they don't want that, because everybody, just as Mitch Priesenstein found and all of his colleagues, that everybody wants the same thing: be powerful, influential, beautiful, attractive, so that they can do what they want, and they want to be envied for it.
It's in the math.
It's totally in the math. All right, Dave, I want to close with one more quote. This one is from Ray Kurzweil, "The Singularity is Near." He has a lot to say about...
That book is an absolute mind
fuck.
Yes. Like, it's trippy, dude. Like, I would dog your pages on it, just have to put it down and just walk it off.
Well, so this is going to be one of those, all right? You ready for this?
Send it.
As intelligence saturates the matter and energy available to it, it turns dumb matter into smart matter, okay? So matter that can act, matter that has choice, right? Thinking to Newton's laws of motion and our adaptation for it. What I should say is that intelligence is more powerful than cosmology. That is, once matter evolves into smart matter, matter fully saturated with intelligent processes, it can manipulate or influence other matter and energy to do its bidding through suitably powerful engineering, such as anthroponautics. Anthroponautical engineering, right? That's not a joke. That is actually what we are aiming for here, is to give people the engineering tools to turn themselves into smart matter, become intelligent, increase your value, increase your mass, as it were, right? But also become trained, be intelligent, be capable, understand the whole human machine and how it interacts with other human machines so that you can better navigate the anthropic domain, better navigate relationships, create options for yourself, secure your sovereignty so that you can overcome physics. You can do what you want with the world around you.
Increase your value, become a gravity machine.
Yeah, that is the goal here. I think that's where we're going to leave it. All right?
It's goodness.
Goodness. All right, we're out. This has been a production of Anthroponautics, owned and operated by Slate Enterprises. Don't steal our stuff or we'll use our influence machine and overcome physics.